Iceburg, let's get it. Okay, hello. It is me, Iceburg Enjoyer. You can probably tell from my name, but I enjoy this deck a bit too much. Anyways, today I will be showcasing my up-to-date Iceburg deck list and some tips and tricks for piloting Iceburg and becoming a better F tier leader player. I don't know where I was going with that. I'll just get started with the cards. Kokoro. Water 7 Searcher, that's it. And Stage, it's Onigashima for Iceberg. It's really good. You want to see this like every game. And Searcher helps. Kokoro helps you get it, but I'm only playing 3 copies with 2 Searcher because otherwise they feel a bit bricky. Stage feels especially bricky in the late game, and if you don't see it early on, you kind of hope that you won't see it at all, because this isn't a ramp deck, this is a get to 5 deck, and hope you stay there. Stage just feels too bricky, and I only really want to cast my Searcher once a game, so I really like these ratios, and I'll get into why a bit later, but that's that. Next up, the counters. We have 4 copies of Khalifa. She is a searchable 2k counter. She's Water 7 and Gala Company, which means you can play her off of your Iceberg. She has Queen's Effect on attack, draw 2, trash 1, Don -1. She's really good. We've got Frankie. Frankie is bad. Oh my god, this card sucks. But it's a searchable, recurable 2k counter. That's it, really. I'll get into later what recurable means. But we've got Hirokiri Kamazo. He's a 4/5, so he swings for free. And his his your turn once per turn, when a Don card is sent to your Don deck, which you can do every turn with Iceberg effect, he pops a 2 cost. Very good for clearing low cost blockers. He's a 4 cost, which makes him recurable. Super good card. I wouldn't really run less than 4. Although, if your meta doesn't have a lot of blue and green decks, you can just cut him for something else. Personally, I'd cut the Frankies for the blocker Sanjis, but being a searchable, recurable 2k does have its merits. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Jet Gatling. Yes, this thing is searchable in this deck. Wow. It's a 0 cost 3k event counter. Do I need to say much more? I'm sure you've all seen this card far too much. Next up, we'll go on to the bulk of the deck, the main core, the Gala engine, and for that I'll have to explain what Iceberg does. This leader is a 5 life, mono purple leader that cannot attack and has 5,000 power. Big emphasis on cannot attack. Major key weakness of this deck. Activate main, Don -1, rest this leader. You may play up to 1 Gala Company type character with a cost of 5 or less, which allows you to play out your Khalifa. This is really powerful. Notably, you don't have to play out a character, meaning you can activate Kamazo's effect without having something to play in your hand, but ideally you do want something to play in your hand every turn to make the most value out of him. As for what you can play, I'll get started with Pulley. Pulley, 4 of, I wouldn't play less. This card's great. This is the only deck where his effect sometimes doesn't activate, because you're not always going to be playing him on 7 Don. On play, rest 2, ramp and Don active, then if you have 8 or more Don, he KOs a 4 cost. He's being played less for the ability to KO stuff, and more for the ability to just ramp. and I'll get into that in a bit. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Kali 5. On play Don -1, you get to return up to 2 characters with a cost of 4 or less from your trash to your hand. That's what I meant by recurable 2Ks. All of these 2Ks can be returned from the trash. It's really good. You can also return Searcher for more search power. But I don't find myself doing that much. Next up, we've got Rob Lucci. Rob Lucci, he's a 5/6. When attacking Don -1, you get to rest a 5 cost or less character. Very strong effect for resting blockers and just swinging into high priority targets. 3 copies of Kaku. When attacking Don -1, he gains Banish until the end of turn. Well, just until this battle, my bad. And then 4 copies of Bluno. Really strong card. Did I say 4? I meant 3. I'm blind. Bluno, on play Don -1, you get to play up to 1 Water 7 card with a cost of 5 or less other than Bluno from your hand or trash. It's Iceburg's effect, but you can play out of trash. And here is the key thing that I see a lot of people mess up. Bluno is just Water 7. He does not have the Gala Company card type because he is not a member of Gala Company. This means you cannot play Bluno off of Iceburg, which then allows you to play something off of Bluno. You have to hard play Bluno for the 4. That being said, being able to get 9 Don worth of value for 4 out of your trash too is very, very strong and is easily one of the best cards in the deck. I'm only playing 4 because you don't actually need... I play this like maybe 8 times a game by seeing a single copy, because you can loop it indefinitely with Kali 5, and I'll get more into that later. Finally, I've got just the generically good cards. People might seem skeptic about this, but trust me, it works. Banana Gator, the GOAT Banana Gator. It's a vanilla 5/7. It's a bit of a weird one, but vanillas are better than people give them credit for. Next up, 2 copies of Reiju. This deck always has less Don than your opponent, even when you're playing against Reiju. This card's amazing. 2 copies of Zephyr. This is more of a tech choice, but it's still a very good card. In testing, I found it really pops off. Monkey D. Luffy, the Gear 5 10 cost. This is a finisher, and it's a combo piece. There are some nasty combos you can pull off with this deck, and this is part of one of them. And then lastly, this is more of a flex slot, but you can really put anything here. Depending on how I'm feeling, I might run the Rush Kaido, or the Minu Hawawa, or maybe a Ragnarok. Heavy Kid meta, Ragnarok. Heavy control meta, Minu Hawawa. Catch-all, Kaido. I just really like it. This is my current list. I don't know where to go from here. Guess I'll just do combos. Okay, so to start, I'll explain the Don curve of Iceburg and some general tips and tricks. You always want to go second with this deck, because if you go first, you skip your turn, and I'll explain why. You'll get 2 Don at the start of your turn, and use Iceburg's effect to use one of those Don to play out a Galala card with a cost of 5 or less. Going to your second turn, you'll have 3 Don, which you use to play out your stage. Then you use your stage's effect to get a Don, Iceburg's effect to return that Don, which then allows you to play out a Galala card. On your turn 3, you'll go up to 5 Don. And 5 Don is where you get to play out this deck's most simple combo. You play a 5-cost character, and then use Iceburg's effect to play another 5-cost character. This is the simplest combo in Iceburg. Double 5-cost on turn 3 for 5 Don. That's why it is imperative that you find stage, or a stage alternative like Pulley, to accelerate yourself to 5 Don on turn 3. Because if you do not find a turn 2 accelerant, you will enter turn 3 on 4 Don and will not be able to go 5-5. That is why the deck runs lots of high quality 4 costs, so that in the event that you are not able to find your accelerant, you can instead play a high quality 4 cost into a 5 cost. I do want to state this isn't so much a ramp deck, rather a deck that is trying to find an early accelerant to help stabilize the mid-game and flood the board in mono purple. If you want to play a mono purple ramp deck, I recommend picking up Purple Kaido. I very much like that deck, but this isn't that. It's its own thing. Now I talked about stage alternatives. What do I mean by that? Pulley's on-play effect costs 2. What you can do is, if you don't have your stage on 3 Don, you can instead return a Don to Iceburg's effect to play out Pulley, who then rests 2 Don and ramps a Don active. This is effectively a one-time stage, as you have used your leader ability, but you have stayed on 3 Don, which means on your next turn, you'll be on 5, ready to pull off your simple combos. Next up, I'll explain the Gear 5 Luffy combo. On 10 Don, you play your Luffy, ideally after you've attacked with all of your characters. You use his on-play effect to -10 to take an extra turn. Then, you use your stage to ramp a Don, rested, and you lose Iceburg's effect to play out any of your Gala Company type cards, Rob Lucci being the best. Next, you will go to your extra turn, getting 2 Don. You can use stage to get a Don, and Luffy's effect to get another Don. Attaching 2 of those Don to Rob Lucci, you swing 8 at life, minusing a Don to rest a 5-cost or less blocker off of Lucci's effect, and then you swing 12 at life. Alternatively, you can also swing 7 and 13, but I like 8 and 12 much more. If you get Kaku instead of Lucci, you instead get the option to banish life. Up next, I'll go over Bluno and Khalifa combos. You might have heard me say this, but I call Khalifa, Khalif 5, and the Tukekana Khalifa, Khalif 4 by their costs respectively, so that I and others don't get confused over which Khalifa I'm referring to. I recently had a game where I used the name Khalifa about 11 times in a single turn, because I was referencing both of them back and forth. Use Khalifa effect to return Khalifa, and Khalifa it was kind of nuts. It was pretty funny though. I lost. Khalifa combos. Bluno combos. Bluno lets you play something from hand or trash. Ideally, you'll be playing something out of trash after it's either been KO'd or you've used it to counter out of an attack. Khalif 5 lets you return 2 things that cost 4 or less. Notably, Bluno costs 4 or less. This is the big combo. Bluno can be returned off of Khalifa. Khalifa can be returned off of Bluno. If Bluno dies, you can return Bluno off of Khalifa. If Khalifa dies, you can return Khalifa off of Bluno. They perform an infinite loop, which gains tons and tons of value. But you can return 2 things off of Khalifa, which means you get to return another 4-cost off of Bluno, like a Reiju or another 2K. it's very important, this doesn't apply just to Water 7 cards. This is any purple 4 cost or less, which makes this very strong. You can do some pretty cool loops, similar to Red-Green Law, if you have maximum characters on board. This is to do with the fact that you have to replace a character if you have 5 on board already. You can use Iceburg's effect to play out Khalifa, use her effect to return Bluno to your hand, and another 4 cost like Reiju, for instance. Then, using 4 Don, replace Khalifa with Bluno, use Bluno's effect to play out your Khalifa, then use Khalifa's effect to play Bluno and return another Kamazao. Then you can spend another 4 Don to replay Bluno. Bluno effect, which lets you replay Khalifa, replacing Bluno, and Khalifa effect lets you return Bluno and another 2k or 4 cost or anything. This is a very powerful loop. As you can see, my hand has gone from a single Khalifa in hand to 4 4 costs in hand, one of which is a Bluno. I could have just gone for 3 2Ks. The fact that you can recur like crazy helps keep you in the game, and makes it sort of difficult to starve Iceburg in this regard. Now, another thing you can do is play Reiju, replacing your Khalifa, to draw 2 cards, then play Bluno, replacing your Reiju, to play Khalifa, who then replaces your Bluno, to then return Bluno and Reiju. This is a combo that lets you infinitely recycle your cards to draw 2 every single turn for 8 Don. And it seems like a hefty price, and I'll be honest, it is, but in the late game, when both players are starved for resources, this becomes a very powerful way to break ahead and gain the advantage over your opponent. Next, for some tips and tricks. I would not recommend keeping a hand, even if it has stage in it, if the hand is absolutely terrible. Typically, the 3 cards you're looking for are Kokoro to find you stage, Stage as your best ramp source, as it hits you not only for turn 3, but for the following turns onwards, and Paulie, who is slightly better than Kokoro because he is a guaranteed turn 1. He's a guaranteed single turn stage, whereas Kokoro isn't guaranteed to hit something. But you do have 7 targets, so it is difficult to whiff. There is a Khalifa play you can make if you have Paulie in your hand as well. On turn 1, when you have 2 Don, you use Iceburg's effect to play out Khalifa. Then, on 3 Don, on your turn 2, you use Iceburg's effect to return a Don, playing out your Paulie, who ramps a Don, and then you can attach a Don to Khalifa and then attack in for 5 with her effect to draw 2 trash 1. Now, be warned, this will put you onto 4 Don on your next turn, which will go against one of the hardcore rules that you want to hit 5 Don But if you have a high quality 4-cost in your hand, like a Bluno or a Reiju to go into next turn, this is usually just worth it anyways. Next up, I'll do some general tips and tricks for piloting Iceburg. I'll address first why you never want to go first if chosen. This is because the idea of the deck is to hit 3 Dawn on turn 2, but if you use Iceberg's effect on turn 1, you will play out a character, but you'll be on 2 Dawn on turn 2 instead of 3 Dawn. And this is bad because you won't be able to use your stage, you won't be able to use Paulie's on play effect, you won't be able to use Tom if you're playing him, you won't be able to use the new 08 Pudding. This is not a very good situation to be in, and of course, since you want to be using Iceberg's effect every turn, when you do use it, you'll go down to 1 and you'll be on 3 Dawn on your turn 3 turn, which means you can't even play out your high quality 4-costs. This is not a good scenario to be in. There is, however, one matchup where you're allowed to commit the cardinal sin of going first, and that is against Reiju. Because if you go first and you use Iceberg's effect, you will be on 0 Dawn and have put a 5 or 6k character into play. Now, this is really good against Reiju because ideally she wants to go second so that she can play out Mini Reiju into Big Reiju to draw 2 cards. She will be able to play Mini Reiju into Big Reiju, but she won't draw any cards. Now, she can play around this going first. If you choose to go second, you will put yourself on a normal Dawn curve, but she can still play off her effects, and I find it way better to be going first against Reiju, as it really just fucks with the way she wants to play. Now, I also want to go a bit into my tech choices in this segment. First up, we have Banana Gator. It's a 5/7 vanilla. It has 1k counter, so it's not bricky, and it's a 5-cost, which means you can play it through your typical 5/5 combos, and it's a 7-cost, which is very important. I was playtesting this and playing this whilst Lore was still a thing, and having 7k for 5 was very, very strong in that matchup. However, even now, 7k is still really good. Up against Blue Dofi, I found Banana Gator absolutely pops off, and against the likes of Black Yellow Luffy, Starter Deck Sabo, and Starter Deck Ace, having the 7 means you get to swing in for free, even if they've pumped themselves up with one of their baby characters. Zephyr is good for the exact same reasons. He costs 7, so he's harder to play out. He doesn't have counter, so he's a little bit more bricky, but he's a 7k, which gives him all the good reasons to play him as Banana Gator. But his on-play is really powerful for being able to just turn something into a vanilla for the turn. 8-cost Kid, any blocker, just anything with like a powerful effect that you just want to ignore for a turn. Blocker Shirahoshi dies to this without healing. Borsalino blocker just straight up gets KO'd. It's a very strong effect that should not be slept on. Also want to talk about other card choices. Top Knot, I've run this for probably about a year. All the way from like 03 to the end of 06. That was like a year, right? Top Knot, very strong. 2-cost, main Don -2, it bottom decks a 4-cost, and the trigger activates its main. Very strong card, except we're currently in a meta where there's not lots of 4-costs that I want to hit. It's mostly 5-costs, which is why I've pivoted to playing Zeph over Top Knot. However, if you're in a meta with a hefty number of 4-costs, or we return to a meta with a hefty number of 4-costs, Top Knot becomes a very strong card again. I just wanted to put that out there. There's a bunch of cards that I consider like other Gala company type cards, other counters, all sorts of things, but this has my highest regards for like a real staple of Iceburg. And if you're going to play it, I recommend playing 2. 1, you see him too less. 3, it's too bricky. 4, God forbid, no. But 2 top knots, it's searchable removal that triggers. It's really, really good. But it's just not seeing its time right now. Anyways, that was my Iceburg deck tech plus tips. I hope it was enjoyable, and if you're looking to pick up Iceburg, you enjoyed the deck tech. I'm kind of awkward when it comes to things like this, so I hope I haven't been too annoying. But that's it. That's the basis of the deck covered. If this goes well, I don't know what to do here. We've reached the end. That's it. I don't know. Video good. Thank you.